Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Nathan Hill. I'm the marketing director here at Next After. I'm so excited that you're joining us today for this webinar on why should Hispanics give to you, looking at how nonprofits are communicating the value proposition through donation pages and other channels to this key demographic, this actively growing demographic in the United States and in North America as a whole. Some really interesting research is going to come to you over the next hour. Hopefully it's helpful for you. But I want to go through a couple housekeeping things first. First off, over here on the right side of your screen, you see a little chat box where people are sounding off, letting everyone know where they're tuning in from. I'm curious to see, are you working at home? Are you working at the office? And then just where in the country or in the world are you tuning in from? So if you haven't done so already, feel free to let us know over there. I just think it's interesting. Clearly, I'm working from home. Most of the Next After crew is, which will make this webinar interesting if my 3-year-old comes in through that door over my shoulder over here. So this will be a lot of fun. A couple housekeeping things. We are recording this webinar. So around 5 p.m. this evening, 5 p.m. Central Time, I'll be able to send you the recording, but I'll also send you some slides so you can go back and review. If there's anything you want to kind of dive deeper into or just hear again, you can do that. You can also share this with colleagues if you know someone that might be really interested in this research. We'll give you all the tools to do that, a recording and the slides. I'll also share some links with you to some of the resources that are going to be mentioned today, to a couple of different studies and some different interviews with, well, I'll let Devon share a little bit more about the details, but some really cool resources that are going to help you dive even a little bit deeper than just the research today. So lots in store for you. If you have questions along the way today, again, use that chat box that you've already been using. I see Susanna working from Houston, Elizabeth working from home, Brady in Vancouver, Beth. We have a lot of Texans on the webinar today. That's fun. But use the same chat box to ask questions all along the way. So if you have an idea that pops up or you want to know, how does this research apply to my situation, ask questions like that. And we'll do our best to answer as many of those as we can at the very end. So we've set aside some time for Q&A. I'll be watching those questions come in throughout the webinar, taking note of them, and then we'll be able to ask those to Yvonne and get his response and his insight at the very end today. Now, one thing I do want to mention, coming up is the Nonprofit Innovation and Optimization Summit. It's coming up at the end of September. Now, who knows where we'll be? Who knows where the world will be at the end of September? But right now, we're still planning to have the NIO Summit. It's a 2-day event. 2 full days of speakers, plus a pre-summit workshop where you can actually get a certification in online donor acquisition or in year-end fundraising. So you can check that out. We had over 600 marketers and fundraisers join us last year. We expect the number to grow even more so this year. You can learn more about this event. It's really cool. It's a ton of fun. It's Willy Wonka themed this year. Maybe that's trademark infringement. We'll see. But you can learn more about this at niosummit.com and get tickets. You can actually get the super early bird discount right now. And then if we do have to cancel for some reason, all these tickets are 100% refundable. So if we cancel, you will be refunded. So you can trust in that. That's all I'm going to say about NEO Summit or these other offers and things. I want to get into the details, into the content, and pass things over to Yvonne. So I've known Yvonne for probably about 2 years now. He's known Tim Kachuriak, who's our founder, for a number of years as well. And he's doing some really cool work helping nonprofits figure out how do you become more relevant in your communication and your marketing to Hispanics. He's gone out and he's done some super interesting research, taking this why should I give to you value proposition question, asking it across different channels as a Hispanic and Spanish speaking donor to see, are these nonprofits equipped to communicate effectively to this key demographic? So I'm going to hand Yvonne to walk us through what have you been learning through this research?
Hello, Nathan, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and thank you so much, Next After, for inviting me to present why Hispanics should give to you. This is a key question, especially in a time like this when perhaps we are encouraged to explore and discover new opportunities as the economy and the circumstances that we live in today perhaps challenge us to think outside the box. And why not give some thought to a key demographic that is growing, that is affluent, that is very generous, and is very digitally driven. And so we're going to look at all of that today. But first, I want to empathize with many of you because I believe since you registered to this webinar, Perhaps you already started or are thinking or begun to have some conversations with your team. And at some point, perhaps you have landed at one of these conclusions. We hear this very often from the different clients and people that we consult with. We have Hispanics, and the results were simply disappointing. Have you experienced that? Did you hear that? Or simply, we don't have the staff or nor the funding. That is a reality that many organizations face. We have other urgent priorities, and that's always a reality that challenges us. Or simply, we want to see success from others first. I mean, who is doing it right? This is an interesting concept, but what are the case studies that we can follow and learn from? Well, if you identify with any of these statements or some other similars, let me tell you that we at Kerux completely understand. And that is the very reason why the agency began. Sure, 5 years ago, but frankly, since then, we have seen tremendous interest, and we had had a lot of conversations with many leading organizations. And we have invested in talking and researching and diving deeper into why this is happening. And we discovered that there is really a gap between the audience and the organizations, the target, if you will, and the messenger. And that is what the focus of this study is all about. In the course of the next few minutes, you're going to be seeing how that manifests itself. But I wanted to tell you that what we're doing here is not just a single shot research. It is a process that we have started since Kerux began. And the very reason is to come alongside leaders like you to really help you understand and attract this growing demographic in an effective way. Because there is a reality, and that is donor diversity. The United States is no longer just a single demographic group. There are many other audiences that are becoming more and more important and influential. And I am just going to go through some of the data right now, but if you want to dive deeper, I recommend to get this book from a famous demographer, William Frey, where he talks about diversity explosion and really goes into all the ins and outs of what is happening from a demographical standpoint. I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights. For instance, there's a total of 327 million people living in the United States, and you can see how that is breaking down in terms of different diversity groups. Hispanics lead the way with over 60 million of them in the United States. By the way, this whole conversation is about Latinos, Hispanics in the United States. We're not talking Latin America in this presentation. You will see also that by the year 2050, that's certainly within our lifetime, minority groups are going to surpass whites in this country. And I want you to get your attention that that has been a consistent trend, happening since the 1980s. And that is given for many reasons, but basically the white population is aging and they're not having so many children, as the minority population is much younger and have more children. And so in just a few more decades, the majority of this country will be very diverse and the majority will be multicultural. And just to give you an idea of how that growth has been happening, you see here in a much more precise way on the left, Hispanics, just in 2012 to 2017 have contributed almost 6 million new people to this country. while on the opposite end, on the right, you see white not even adding 1 million people. And so I just want that for you to absorb. This is a reality, and it could be threatened. It could be, it could be perceived as a threat, but its reality is an opportunity. These are very different times, and nonprofits need to be adapting and evolving to this situation. But there's also an economic motivation, I believe, because Hispanics are an economic powerhouse. I mean, since the 1990s and in projections to the 2021, just a year from now, they're going to be almost tipping $2 trillion contributing to this economic here in the United States, $2 trillion. And if we put that in perspective, if U.S. Hispanic was to be a country, it would be the 7th biggest economy in the world, equal to Canada and larger than Australia. So it's really, really an important group. The brands, the media, even politicians are already engaging, and we're going to get to that in a little bit later. But what about nonprofits? You can see here that Hispanics have drove more real total expenditure growth than whites over the past decades. On the left side, again, you saw Hispanics contributing over 28% of that expenditure growth, whereas white 25%. So you're seeing that happening and happening and happening, and it's a great thing to grasp. Also, the research is focused on not only Hispanics, but also Spanish, because Spanish is at its peak. There is a total of 41 million Spanish speakers in the United States. And in just, the last few years, the last 7 years, that was the largest numerical increase compared to other languages. 4 million were added. So Spanish continues to be a very important aspect of Latino culture. 72% of all U.S. Hispanics speak Spanish at home. Now, we're going to get into language, and we're going to see how language plays a key role. But I also want to say that Spanish is not all of it. Spanish is not just the focus. It is part, but cultural is big. Cultural is a more important aspect, and we're going to get to that as we see the examples. Now, you might be wondering, okay, all these different things, how are they related to giving? And here is some data that we obtained from Nielsen from their Skyward research. And you can see that what are the areas or the categories that Latinos are contributing to. Religious plays a key role, followed by other organizations, and then you also have education and healthcare and arts and social welfare. But you can see that the aspects of faith and education and family and health are very important to the Latino community. And if you are representing any of these groups or any of these categories, I should say, you should consider this demographic. Here's just a few examples that show how Latino has been involved in recent events giving. This has to do with when the big disaster happened in Mexico and in Puerto Rico, and both the biggest television Spanish networks, Telemundo and Univision, did a telethon. And in the course of that program, $20 million from that audience was raised. And this is just to give you an example. Another organization that does annual fundraising events such as radiothons is St. Jude. And this is just one example that in 24 hours, they raise $500,000. We follow this typically, and we try to show the examples. And so hopefully this is encouraging to you. All of that is as a context. The question really is, since that is a reality, since Hispanics are a very important population and they have financial capacity and even are inspired to donate, as these examples show, the question then is, how effectively are nonprofits communicating their value proposition to Hispanics? That is something that we at Kerux ask ourselves. And because this is frankly pioneering space, we turn to the expertise of Mac Labs, who apply a very solid methodology to score a value proposition on the secular commercial side of the industry, and then also to Next After, who applied those learnings and took it to the nonprofit space. And so on the shoulders of these two organizations, we built the Why Should Hispanics Give to You? But a little bit of the English study. This is what Next After did. They look at 127 nonprofit organizations, and they score their value proposition across 4 different channels: the telephone, the email, the website, and the social media. And the methodology was followed according to the Mac Labs research. They score appeal, exclusivity, credibility, and clarity. Now, I'm just reviewing here. Perhaps in this audience, there are people that are familiar with this study. I assume there will be others that are not. So I'm just gonna go very, very quickly through what this study is about to set the baseline for what we've done in Spanish or in our own study. What the English study attempts to answer is, if I am your ideal donor, why should I give to you as opposed to any other organization or no one at all? That is a very basic value proposition question. That is what that study is meant to answer. And there is no better way to show the importance of a value proposition than through an experiment. And perhaps you have seen this before. This is Next After experiment 111. And it's just show how copy on a donation page can affect the force of the value proposition. For instance, here is the web donation page from a politician that they work on, Senator John Cornyn, and they have the challenge to increase donations on this page. So what Next After did to treat this page is they added a more punchy headline with "Stand with John Cornyn." They added copy outlining reasons for why to support the senator. And then they included evidentials that back up each one of these claims. Again, these are just some copywriting improvements on the page. And there you see the control page and the treatment page. And what would you think were the results on both of these scenarios? Did the control page perform better as it was in its original format, or the treatment page? Well, here are the results. The treated page had over 250% increase in conversion rate. Again, showing then the importance of articulating a precise, clear, and powerful value proposition. Clarity is more important than brevity. That is one of the key takeaways of that study. And so as we got to know Mac Labs, and more importantly, Next After, and all the vast experiments and testing that they have done, we wondered how we can take those learnings and apply it to the Hispanic market. And after conversations and learning about their value proposition through different sessions, we proposed to do a similar study, but focusing on Hispanics. And basically, we went and analyzed 57 leading nonprofits that are across several different verticals: disaster, environmental, food banks, hospitals, performing arts, religion. I mean, the list is there. But we were very careful in selecting these organizations because we try to match them with those categories that I showed earlier. Hispanics are more likely to give. So these are not just random organizations. These are organizations that align with the passions, the interests, and the desires of Hispanics overall. And as I said, cover a vast spectrum of categories. What we did is we created a mystery donor, pretty much like what English did too. In our case, it was Marisa Ramos. And Marisa Ramos contacted all of these organizations through all those 4 channels: email, phone, social media, and on the website. And basically she said, hola, mi nombre es Marisa Ramos. Hello, my name is Marisa Ramos. I am Latina, yo soy Latina y estoy pensando en hacerles una donación. I am Latina and I'm thinking of making a donation. Pero antes me gustaría preguntarles por qué debería donar a ustedes en vez de alguna organización que hace un trabajo similar. But before, I would like to ask you, why should I give to you as opposed to any other organization that does a similar work? And notice that we left there some cues to see the type of response that we will get. First of all, the message was in Spanish, and we did that very intentionally to see if on the other end there was someone that can respond to Marisa in Spanish. But then we also said, I am Latina. And we left that as a clue to say, this is a community that matters to me. So with these cues, we started to receive responses. Now, the scoring methodology was very similar, again, to what Next After done in their study. There you see each one of those channels and a score from 1 to 5 on all those different criteria: appeal, exclusivity, credibility, and clarity. So a little bit of review for how to measure the value proposition. If you already went through this, bear with me. If this is new to you, I'll try to be as clear as possible. But you can see that this is like a prism where appeal and exclusivity have the strongest pull. Also, clarity plays a good role, and then credibility as well. But appeal and exclusivity are at the front, are the key parts of this value proposition prism. Basically, appeal answers the question, basically appeal has to do with, I like it, I want it. I mean, at first glance, when you read the response or when you see a website, does it have an appeal? You like it, you want it. Exclusivity is, I cannot find it anywhere else. Credibility is, I believe in it, I believe in you. And clarity is, I understand it, I understand you. So these are the different definitions for the criteria that we went on to score. And you can see the best value propositions have a differentiator. And that is the meeting point between appeal and exclusivity. It's a powerful only factor. Think of it this way. When you are late at night, and perhaps now if you're at home and spending more time on media, maybe those infomercials, come, and you'll see this, for instance, guy who's trying to sell a product that resolves masculine baldness. Well, that's how this information goes. Company X, Y, and Z offers the only potent that has been clinically proven to systematically cure male pattern baldness in 7 days or less. In other words, they're trying to pack in that message everything that they can to say, this is the only product that is going to work for you. And in the same way, we ought to build our messaging if we want to convince people of our causes and our message. But notice that this value proposition can also be diluted depending on the market space that you're in. If you're the only solution in the market space, then you have a very strong chance of getting that transaction. But if there are two others, your value proposition force gets reduced. And not to say if you have 6 others or 10 or keep multiplying. So as you have a cause or an organization or a mission that is very similar to perhaps other organizations, you need to really think how to differentiate yourself to articulate a value proposition that is attractive. And even more so when you try to communicate to a Latino donor. In summary, I must understand you, that's clarity, so that I can believe, that's credibility, that only you, exclusivity, have what I want. And this is a statement, from a consumer or donor perspective. I must understand you first, so that I can believe that only you have what I want. That's what we were thinking as we went then through the study. Now, we're still aggregating the data and all the scoring, and we are going to make a final report available here in a few more weeks. I'll get to it at the end of this webinar. But I wanted to share with you some general findings that we already discovered, and they're very, very enlightening. For instance, 73% of nonprofits across all verticals studied do not have a donation page that optimized for Hispanic donors. That is a very large number of organizations. In other words, they were not prepared to even acquire a donor or take a transaction. Take a look. This organization is there to help enhancing lives in accelerating a spectrum of solutions for tomorrow. Now, again, as we go through these examples, I would encourage you to score them, just like we did, on appeal, on credibility, on exclusivity, on all of those criteria, and 1 to 5, what would you give? But in this case, I want to say that this page was relying on Google Translate. And that's, by the way, a big number of the organizations. I would say a majority of the organizations actually rely on Google Translate. In other words, they don't have this content that is tailored to Hispanic, Spanish-speaking audience. They just let Google do the job. And so, for instance, you see this page. When you land on the page, this is a home page. It's in English. If I am a Spanish user, I can have the choice, the option to translate it with Google. And then something like this happens. Google automatically translates the text, and the button for donar, donate, is translated. So I hit the button. But look what happened. The experience breaks. The donation page is not translated by Google. All the buttons are in English. The amounts are pretty high, I would say, for somebody new in the Spanish space to donate. I don't have any value proposition messaging that really inspires. And I immediately began to doubt, well, is this really what I want to do? From a Hispanic, Spanish-speaking donor. I was excited a little bit that they have some Spanish through Google, but maybe I don't want to continue this transaction. So this is actually something that happens very often, where some of the content, even if it's tailored in Spanish and contextualized as we say it, at the end, when the actual donation transaction happens, that experience rarely gets contextualized, and therefore then the results in conversions are not there. But I thought in sharing something rather funny with Google. There is an organization that very recently actually updated their website. And I'm not going to go through, English. I'm assuming you already saw this is already translated by Google. It's picking up the text that is in English, and Google apparently doesn't know very good Spanish, because on the call out there, you have the text that is in English. Your gift today helps 2 times more as many families with your special spring match. Notice the word match. Well, when Google translated, says tu donación hoy ayuda a 2 veces más familias con nuestro partido especial de primavera, a special spring game. So it looks like this is going to have some sort of a game. I mean, partido is a soccer game connotation. But it gets actually even a little more funny. On this text, as you scroll down the page, by the way, this is a continuation. Google says, pasando ahora con vaquilla. The word vaquilla there, and we didn't want to put actual English text this because the word vaquilla will be identifying the name of the organization. Google translated the name of the organization. And that's what Google needs to do, right? Because it's text. Google doesn't know. But what is happening is that as a Spanish user, I see it, and now the name of the organization disappears, and it gives me this term vaquilla, which has to do with cows, by the way. So nothing really relevant or contextualized or proper, and even damaging, I would say, to the brand and the name of this organization. But if you keep scrolling down, you'll see that there is some graphics in there, a big banner ad. And of course, as it is an image, Google cannot translate that. So you have a page that has something Spanish, translates the name of the organization because it cannot identify what's the name of the organization, and it's just some pure text, and then also gives me images that are not translated or even relevant to my audience. But it does tell me, regístrate para recibir un correo electrónico. Sign up to register and get emails. Would you? I don't think I would. So let's keep moving. Another general finding for email, almost 42% of the nonprofits contacted did not answer our email. That was also very staggering. 42% just completely ignore us. 52 of the organizations responded within 48 hours, and then the rest did in the course of 1 week, or within 1 month. We did not hear nothing at all. But we were very generous as we did this tabulation, and what we found is that yes, some of those 50% of the organizations responded, but they actually responded with an automatic reply and in English. And so that didn't help much, right? The donor here probably got a loss and is, a loss in translation. So not a good experience. Here's an example of a fairly good email. We blur there the name of the organization, but you can see it's in Spanish. Again, as you think through this, just by looking at it, you saw the one in English, and now you're seeing this. What score would you give it? Does it have appeal? Does it have credibility? Does it have exclusivity? Does it have clarity? For instance, I'll just translate some of it. Hola Marisa, hello Marisa. Gracias por tu mensaje. Thank you for your message. En primer lugar, por favor, perdona mis habilidades de traducción en español. First of all, please forgive my ability to translate to Spanish. So you can see that at least they're putting some effort. Somebody is translating there. una de las grandes cosas que hace la organización es brindar educación musical vital para niños en comunidades marginales de Los Ángeles. One of the big things that our organization does is to bring education to kids in communities, marginalized communities in Los Angeles. And then it goes on and on to give some more evidence. So in our scoring, yes, this is an example of someone that took the time to translate and to provide information that could be useful for the potential donor to decide whether to donate or not. And then also, if you notice, added there a link to learn more and expand. And at the end says, amablemente, kindly. So there was a human touch to this communication, something very important specifically for Latinos. Now we're gonna go through some examples for social media. 65% of the organizations contacted did not respond to our inquiry. This is also, very, very shocking, especially when you have Hispanics that are very immersed in Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And today, in this crisis that we are in, in this circumstance where we are more forced, if you will, to connect digitally and in those channels, communicating through social media is key. And 65% of these organizations that we contacted are not even there. In fact, check out this message. It's in English. It says, thank you for your message. We check messages infrequently on Facebook page, but if your inquiry is time sensitive, please call us. Okay, so we're not here on Facebook. Or this one is in Spanish, but I'll translate. Thank you for your message. You should donate to us because we are the best, porque somos los mejores. You can read the pages, you can read our webpage and the projects, and there you see that we do a lot for very little money. Wow, they're the best. I like that, short and sweet, but nothing really solid there for me to make a decision. Or look at this one, there's another one, very funny for me. Sorry, I'm just Charlie, the chatbot, and I can help with answering simple questions. I wasn't able to answer your question at this time. A real person will be with you soon. Well, poor Charlie, he did not pass Spanish, it looks like, so he could not answer. And these are just a few of the examples. Here's one that is a little bit better. By the way, this organization on Facebook is the same one that was using on their webpage Google Translate, and it translated the name of the organization. But notice here, they took the time to answer and to provide evidence of what type of work they do. If they would just copy this and put it on their donation page without relying on Google, they would already be a step ahead. It looked like somebody in the organization was able to articulate a value proposition in Spanish, but they were not doing it on their website. They did it on Facebook. Good for them, but it could be better across the different channels. On phone, 100% of the organizations studied do not use WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a huge channel, especially in the Latino population, both here in the United States and abroad. It's free text messaging with audio too, and none of the organizations that we study actually had any communication there. So it's a huge, huge opportunity to explore. Now, as we go into the final stretch of this presentation, I want you to listen to a couple messages that were recorded, so you get a real taste of what it was like to talk with these organizations. We bleep the name of the organizations, but you can follow a little bit the conversation. The first one is actually in English translated, and you'll see how that dynamic goes. And then the second one is in Spanish, but I want to point out something, and that's why I'm going to encourage you to listen carefully to both of them. Take a listen.
Let me get a Spanish interpreter. One moment, please.
Okay, gracias.
The American provides the most comprehensive source of useful information to support.
Te voy a estar ayudando el día de hoy. Señora, va a hablar con usted a través de mí, que seré su intérprete.
Ah, perfecto. Bueno, buenos días. Mi nombre es Marisa Ramos.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Marisa Ramos.
Soy latina y estoy pensando en hacer una donación.
I am Latin and I would like to make a donation.
Pero antes me gustaría preguntarles,
Okay, I would like to ask,
¿por qué debería donar a ustedes en vez de otras organizaciones que hacen un trabajo similar?
I would like to ask, why should I donate to you guys instead of a different organization that do the similar work?
Okay. Now, I mean, when it comes to making donations to the American, it's honestly up to the donor whether they would like to donate with us or maybe another organization. The organizations that are similar to the American may have similar missions than that of the American. It just really depends upon which organization you choose to donate with specifically. But I mean, I wouldn't be able to, encourage or not encourage you to make a donation. It's honestly up to you.
Muy bien. Para serle honesta, el hecho de hacer una donación y a qué organización hacerla ya es algo que depende de usted. Nosotros, a muchas organizaciones de estas están asociadas a la asociación, aunque no sea la misma organización. Sin embargo, al momento de hacer la donación, yo no le exhortaría a hacerle una donación a ninguna organización, nosotros ni a ninguna otra, sino a la que usted sienta que debe hacer.
If you're interested in making a donation with the American, there are many ways you can do it. I would recommend making the donation by way of mail or online so that you can, of course, process the donation how you would like, or if you would like to make it in memory or honor of someone, you can do so as well. Interpreter? I have to get a new Spanish interpreter. One moment.
Sí, gracias.
This chat is just so incredible on so many levels. We can peel the onion in so many ways, but we won't. I just want to emphasize a couple of things. One, this organization was relying on a third-party vendor to translate a call like this. Well, third-party vendor has no idea of what your organization does, what the passion that you can communicate, why this is important. None of that, none of the DNA, none of the values, none of the language. And you can see, if you pick up a little bit, the interpreter was very dispassionate. In fact, in the translation that he did, when the lady said, we cannot encourage you, by the way, in English, we cannot encourage you to donate, seriously, but even the translator made it worse. She said, we will not exhort you to donate to anyone. So really awful in the translation experience. But then at the end, look what happened. The translator completely disappeared on the picture. He thought his job was done, hung up and left there, the call incomplete, and the agent has to find another translator. Well, we cut the conversation for the sake of time. But definitely not a good approach. And of course, that was a low score. But I want to contrast that with the second call. And in a second call, it's so interesting because there is no translator involved. But take a listen.
Good morning, Caroline, how can I help you?
Sí, buenos días. ¿Hay alguien que hable en español?
Yo le hablo español, señora, ¿qué desea?
Sí, buenos días. Quería hacerte una consulta. Bueno, mi nombre es Marisa Ramos, yo soy latina y me estoy contactando con ustedes porque estaba pensando hacer una donación, pero primero quería saber cuál es la diferencia entre ustedes y otros.
So Marisa Ramos here connected with the call with the agent, and the agent spoke Spanish right away. And so he's now asking the question. Oops.
Good morning, Yo le hablo español, señora, ¿qué desea?
Ah, sí, buenos días. Quería hacerte una consulta. Bueno, mi nombre es Marisa Ramos, yo soy latina y me estoy contactando con ustedes porque estaba pensando hacer una donación, pero primero quería saber cuál es la diferencia entre ustedes y otras organizaciones que están haciendo lo mismo por la cual yo debería elegirlos a ustedes.
Bueno, yo no le puedo contestar esa pregunta porque está llamando al departamento que no se encarga de las donaciones. Yo le podría transferir a la fundación, que ellos son los que se encargan de eso, ¿ok?
Bueno, gracias.
Y usted le puede dejar un mensaje a ellos.
Ok, gracias.
Good morning. This is Paula speaking.
Hola, sí, buenas tardes. Por favor, con el departamento de donaciones.
Ok.
Gracias.
Notice that the person spoke in English.
Hola, sí, buenos días.
Hola, buenos días.
¿Cómo estás?
Bien, ¿y usted?
Bien, bien, bien. Quería hacer una consulta. Es el departamento de donaciones, ¿verdad?
Sí, ¿cómo le puedo ayudar?
Sí. Bueno, mi nombre es Marisa y soy latina y estaba pensando en hacerles una donación. Pero antes me gustaría preguntarles por qué debería donarles a ustedes en lugar de otra organización que está haciendo el mismo trabajo.
Ok, déjenle, yo aquí trabajo, lo único que yo hago aquí es proceso las donaciones.
Ok.
Entonces, déjenla contacto con alguien que le pueda contestar sus preguntas.
Bueno, está bien. ¿Habla español?
Sí.
Ok, gracias.
Okay, un momento.
This person, does she speak Spanish? And the answer is yes. So, Marisa, in this call, had 3 touch points. And on those 3 occasions, all the people spoke Spanish. They did not need a translator, and yet neither one of those was able to answer a very simple question. Why should I give to you as opposed to any other organization? I understand this is not the job of these people that were taking the calls, but it shows how important it is to share that vision and to provide messaging to your internal staff, because there might be people in there that can articulate that question in Spanish very well, but they need to be empowered and they need to be motivated to share the message. So I just thought these 2 phone calls are very revealing of what is happening out there. Now, I mentioned to you that this is just a preview of a complete report that we are working on. If what I share with you sparked some interest, please be looking out for the final report. We have insights and practical applications from all these different organizations and many more. And all of that's going to be available. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the final report is going to be ready on Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo. So just a little bit over a month. But when it comes, because you are signed up to this webinar, we will be sending you an email and you will be one of the first ones to get access to that report. It will have all these scorings. It will have even more case and more examples. And more importantly, it will have ideas to try. This is a complete session we are working on together with Next After. And it's very exciting because it will combine some of the best thinking in the industry that we actually interview. People from Comcast and Target and Google and Twitter and many of them companies sharing what they're doing to tap into this demographic. But more importantly, we picked the brain and we said, what advice would you give to a nonprofit leader? How can they get started? How do they arrange their staff? What type of partnerships and to whom they should be working with? How do you actually do a campaign for Christmas or Easter or any other particular emphasis? And we have all these videos available even right now. But what we're doing is we're taking that best thinking and then matching it up with some of the best ideas that Next After have come up with in all their archive of testing. And so we are going to provide this whole section, as I said, providing the teaching, if you will, from these marketing experts, as well as the practical application with the very graphic ways of saying how to build a landing page, how to create email messages, how to provide phone scripts perhaps, and many more resources. All will be available in this complete and final report. We're very excited for that piece. So I just want to share with you, as I wrap up, a little bit video teaser of what those interviews are all about. Hello everyone, greetings from Hollywood, California. We are getting ready for the Hispanic Marketing Conference, the most important event of the industry.
The Hispanic market particularly is a huge opportunity for nonprofits who depend on donors.
One after another, studies show that Hispanics contribute more to this country than they take away.
The challenge is to actually understand and recognize the power of culture.
We go into very deep understanding of their beliefs, of their behaviors.
It is less about language and it is more about culture.
So you need to create attuned communications that it's really gonna call to the heart of Hispanic.
I would say nonprofit is probably the first place that should be reaching out.
If they decide to be always on, they tend to succeed.
Now the full interviews are available right now. We will be sending you the link. It's keruxgroup.com/interviews, keruxgroup.com/interviews. Also, you will have a link to our preliminary report. Perhaps you already have it, but even if you have it, there will be also, I'm sorry, if you go there, you would also have additional content that was not presented here today. And then you also have a link to the next after, why should I give to you a study that I referenced earlier, and that is the basis for what we have done. I really hope that this presentation was useful to you, at least to start thinking about this and to really feel that it is possible to reach this demographic. It's an untapped opportunity. The challenge, though, it's not so much in the market as it is, I believe, in the organizations to really understand that a paradigm shift is necessary in order to be effective and win the hearts of Hispanics. That's what we're all about at Kerux. I'd like to end by a quote from William Frey, that demographer that I mentioned at the very beginning. He said, "I am convinced that the United States is in the midst of a pivotal period, issuing an extraordinary shift in the nation's social demographic makeup. If planned properly, these demographic changes would allow the country to face the future with growth and vitality." And we at Kerux want that growth and vitality to be transferred also into the nonprofit space. We hope these resources we're making available, these learnings, help you to do that. And if you think we can partner together in the future, we will really enjoy that opportunity. Thank you so much. Next after, thank you, Nathan. I turn it back to you.
Yvonne, thank you so much. This stuff is really cool. And I mean, it's fun to look at theory and research, but it's really fun to hear the actual phone calls and the actual interactions and like how people are answering these questions in real life. So thank you so much for sharing those. All that stuff is so interesting. And it just shows how hard this can be in reality when something sounds simple. Okay, so we need like translations, we need to be relevant, like, okay, but how do you actually equip everyone across your organization to do that? And that's really the big challenge, it seems. I have a couple things I want to share with you all, but we are going to do some Q&A here for a little bit. So if you have questions that you want to ask Yvonne, put those in the chat. I already have a couple questions noted that we'll respond to. If there's other things that are top of mind, put those in the chat box. While you're doing that, I just want to share with you a couple of quick things here. We do have some online certification training that's available to you, especially if you're working at home, you got a little extra time now maybe, or maybe you're super busy with trying to pivot communication. I don't know exactly your situation. But we have these online courses, and through the Next After Institute, we do have some workshops, and there's more perks if you become a member of the Next After Institute. But for you today, if you go to courses.nextafter.com, you can look at, we have 7 courses that are available. We actually have a new one coming probably in the next week here, so you can keep your eyes out for that. But I want to give you a free course. Again, if you have a little extra time, you're looking for ways that you can really maybe shift some budget or strategy towards online, you can dive deep, get a certification in something like email fundraising, donation page optimization, A/B testing. We have 7 different courses you can check out. You can get a free course if you use the code at the bottom of your screen, Learn from Home Try. I'll send this out in an email to you as well, but we'd like to give you a free course during this time to help just equip you as much as we can to do our part to help you be successful during kind of a crazy time where we don't know exactly what's going on. And then as a member, if you choose to become a member of the Next After Institute, there's some other perks that come along with that as well, including some quarterly members only webinars and things like that. You get exclusive access to workshops without paying a registration fee. You can even, if you become a premium member, get a free ticket to the NEO Summit coming up at the end of September. So feel free to check those things out. Again, you can go to courses.nextafter.com to learn more. So I'm watching the chat box. Again, there's a couple questions here that we can start to go through. So Yvonne, I'm going to throw a couple of these your way. One that came in pretty early on from Michelle. She's really asking this. Can you please define the difference between Hispanics and Latinos as you see it? Is there a difference? What is that difference? And then how does that affect your actual approach to marketing and communicating?
Hispanics is a term that is used to identify those from Latin countries that are residing in the United States. That's mostly the bulk of people and how that term has been defined. Latinos includes them, of course, but then also includes people that might not be here in the United States, but are in Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and anywhere else in the world that were born in a Latin country. So those are the big way. That's a just broad way of defining those 2 terms.
Cool, thank you. I know there's a little conversation going on in the chat about lots of people define those terms in different ways, and so it's good to just get a little bit of clarity. So thank you. Let's see, I've got one more on my list, and then if you have a question, again, feel free to drop it in this chat and we'll be able to address it here. But one more question from Karen. She was asking, do all Hispanics speak the same Spanish? And then just a follow-up question from me, how do you account for different variations in just people speaking Spanish in different ways? How do you account for that in your online marketing and communication?
The Spanish that is spoken across all these 20 plus countries is very similar. There are, of course, differences in terms sometimes or connotations. Some could be even offensive in some way. But overall, it's understood. It's the same situation that happens between, English speakers in the United States and say, I don't know, UK or Australia or Canada. And so you have those differences, but across the board, there is understanding. For those Latinos that are here in the United States, they tend to kind of melt and adapt to terms that are actually unique in this country. And sometimes that's led by those groups that have the most representation. For instance, Mexicans or Puerto Ricans. I am from Argentina, and so I kind of have to, follow those terms and adapt. As well as sometimes they have to adapt to me, when we're having conversations. But overall, we understand each other. And one point I want to make in relationship to that, when it comes to marketing, language plays an important role. It's a cultural connector, but it's not all of it. It's not just the centerpiece of it. It's one more element in a cluster of other elements that make up the authenticity of your message. And that has to do with how you communicate values and how you communicate interests and how you communicate through the images. And so more and more again, a Hispanic community, it's so drawn to cultural appeals more than just language appeals. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes organizations still fall in. Because yes, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the simple approach of taking what is in English and doing a one-on-one to English to Spanish worked. Many organizations saw success in that with that approach. Today, Hispanics are much more sophisticated, if you will. They are also bilingual in many ways, yet they retain the same values and aspirations and cultural clues that they grew up with or are connected with, their grandma or their pastor or their, country of origin. And so they celebrate cultural. And so cultural is really the centerpiece of any marketing effort. And it has, and I think for fundraising purposes, it's very important to understand, because when it comes to money, what pulls the heart and pulls the wallet is being able to touch those heartstrings.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense. Thank you. We have another question here from Violet. And Violet, I'm kind of looking through and trying to figure out what's really the core question here. I think a lot of this revolves around what this organization does specifically. So without knowing the exact organization, we'll kind of dance around this and figure it out. But she's asking, it sounds like they do a lot of work with Hispanics that are maybe just moving to the United States. A lot of them have low incomes, but they also, it sounds like they're in healthcare. Okay, so they're in healthcare, but they have some different segments of their audience, people who have maybe been here for multiple generations, Hispanic families, maybe have larger incomes, but then a lot of their work is done with Hispanics that have just recently come here more recently and have lower incomes. How do you change your messaging based on these different groups?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And so I think that goes with what I was saying earlier, trying to understand really the cultural of that target. And I'm hearing here, based on what you said, that there is sub layers of target, sub targets. But it's true. The Hispanic household, it's multi-generational, meaning the abuelita lives there, the grandma, as well as the parents and the kids. And that is a very unique characteristic that is not similar to whites per se. And so it is important for marketers and for fundraisers to understand that. Perhaps there are messages that can motivate to the younger audience, and those might be in English, but with, again, some seasoning of Latino culture, and motivating a conversation with the parents who maybe are in the middle, and they go, back and forth between these two cultures. And maybe it's also expanding that to the grandma who just speaks Spanish and perhaps is not well connected with technology and all of that. So without knowing all the details, it's hard for me to define a strategy for each group. But the point I want to make is, as an overall, you need to consider Latinos a multi-generation target, and build messaging and strategies around that reality. It is possible. It takes some thinking.
Yeah, I imagine it takes some thinking, and then also the data and the segmentation to be able to do that. And even just from a broader segmentation standpoint, yeah, just testing your way into messaging to figure out what is most effective. Obviously, I'm not Hispanic and I can't speak specifically to that culture, but just testing across the board to know what messages do resonate with people. That's where that.
This is a perfect time, as people are mostly now home, and as people spend time on social media or the streaming services. I think organizations have a great opportunity to precisely target, a family environment. And, Hispanics are very gregarious and very family oriented. And so, content that inspires kids, inspires family values, inspires faith. I mean, all of that really resonates. And if organizations can take advantage of this moment of, people being more at home and in front of the screens, I think they can start gaining an audience that before was maybe harder to reach.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. There's no more questions in the chat, but I have one kind of final question, if you'll entertain it. Is there, you've kind of covered a lot. There's a lot of different channels, a lot of different approaches that you can probably take around messaging and segmentation, all that stuff. What's one thing that someone can do, whether it's today or through the course of this week, just to take like a small step forward?
Start. I mean, that is a very simple thing, but you got to start. And I will say again, start on social channels. Start doing social listening. You can create simple graphics. You can create short videos. You can create some surveys. You can create content that is not just translated, but it is really thought, tailored, intended for Latinos, and might be in English, might be in Spanish, depending on the audience. But start sending these messages, publishing these messages, and start having a conversation. They are the ones that are going to, guide you as to what they want. And I'll give you a simple example, without really identifying the person. But there is a popular, influential preacher that we actually created a video demo of him preaching in Spanish. And he, out of his own, decided to publish it in his own English Facebook channel. Well, immediately, the people that were in that channel that were Spanish speaking or had a connection with Spanish culture started to respond and to encourage him to do this more often, and how good it will be for his, pastor friend in Mexico, and so on and so forth. And so they had, over 50 million comments and likes and all of that. The audience is there. Even in your English channels, you have people that have this affinity, this desire, and if you start posting their things, you will notice that there is an interest. And I would say, as you educate the audience, you have a chance also to make that effort self-sustaining, which is at the end the question that many of, I'm sure, in the audience are asking. So start there, but then move further and perhaps create a, mini landing page, or a landing page with, or a website with, some content. It doesn't have to be as robust as your English website. It doesn't have to be, with all the whistles, but some content that is curated for the audience to keep them engaged and keep them cultivating that relationship. I know the organization that right now is offering, a free resource every month, and is seeing subscriptions like never before. They never had a list. Well, now each month you see, hundreds, 200, 300, and so their email list is growing. It is possible. You can begin with small steps, but make it intentional, make it strategic, and make it incremental.
I love it. That's super helpful. Ivan, thank you so much. This is awesome. This research is super interesting. Again, for you that are all listening and viewing, we're going to send this report out to you all once it releases on Cinco de Mayo. Maybe we'll give you a little early access. We'll see if we can get that. But thank you so much for taking an hour plus out of your day, again, to just spend, learning. It seems like some of us have a little bit more time on our hands now to engage in training, and it's really cool to see more and more people wanting to dive into, how do we engage these different demographics and just do a better job of communicating to more people. So it's really exciting. Ivan, again, thank you so much. We'll be in touch soon. And then listeners, have a great rest of your afternoon. And all the best as you take these first steps to just get started. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.